According to the University of California Museum of Paleontology, evolution is the change in the inherited characteristics of populations over time. These inherited characteristics are adaptations that a species has gained through natural selection. Natural selection is the gradual non-random process in which adaptations are either passed on through generations or extinguished. The main proponent of evolution is that all living things stem from a common ancestor with similar traits. This leaves creationism, which, according to Stanford University, is the idea that a higher being created all life as it is at present. And according to a local science professor, creationism is not science, but rather supernatural. Intelligent design, the main proponent of creationism, is the proponent that certain characteristics of the universe and the living things are best explained by an intelligent, superior being not an uncontrolled process, such as natural selection. The notion that things could evolve into other things goes back to the ancient Greek philosophers. The most well-known publication on evolution is Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species. On his voyage aboard the HMS Beagle, Darwin explored islands off the coast of South America to study the organisms he found there. When Darwin returned from his 5-year voyage, he presented his findings on what he saw as many different species of birds to an ornithologist, John Gould. Gould proved that Darwin's many different birds were actually just the same finches with different adaptations, due to its surroundings. An earlier study by geneticist Gregor Mendel demonstrated that the inheritance of certain characteristics in pea plants follows a particular order. This study was still also considered the basis of genetics. These genes are the adaptations that make up evolution that pass through the different organisms through time. In order to get a better picture of the topic, both a local high school science teacher, Jacqueline Caldwell, as well as a religious advisor, who is also a science professor at St. Philip's College, Dr. Berkey, were asked 2 questions. What is evolution? And what is natural selection?
Evolution to me is a big picture idea where we see the progression of organisms from their most basic state to a more complex state and any other changes that go along with that.
What I consider is evolution gives an atheist a basis for explaining life, how life exists apart from a creator. So evolution denies the need for a God to be involved in the universe. So basically, I consider that evolution is the creation theory or story for the religion of atheism. So whatever be our religious background, what we need to answer is 3 questions. We have to answer 3 questions, whatever be our worldviews. How did it all begin? Or where did we come from? Secondly, the question is, what went wrong? What is the source of evil and suffering? And thirdly, what can we do about it? So my question is, can life arise from non-life? So is it possible for the basic molecules of life to form randomly in an organic soup? Is it possible that a blind chance process for a random configuration of amino acid and other organic molecules to become life? That's my whole point. Life has to come from pre-existing life. This is a textbook that our science students use. Even in colleges, people use this book by Sylvia Mayer. The name of the book is Inquiry into Life. Look at these 2 sentences that she's saying. Today, we do not believe that life arises spontaneously from non-life, and we say that life comes only from life. But look at the next sentence. But the very first living had to have come from non-living chemicals. How is that possible? What she is saying that life comes only from life, but at the next sentence, that the very first life came from non-life. How is that possible? If life can come only from life, how can life come from non-life?
In a single cell,
there are approximately 7,000 different proteins. All of these proteins are formed from 20 different amino acids in different sequences. For example, protein A has a specific sequence of these amino acids, while protein B has a different sequence. According to creationists, these 20 amino acids cannot come together on their own, randomly, to create one massive chain that is a protein. A single cell is a complex machine made up out of proteins that cannot be produced from random chemicals, but rather it must be created.
The day-to-day, decade-to-decade sort of change in biological structures, where you see animals, plants, bacteria eating and being eaten and changing because of those patterns.
See, natural selection is considered to be a survival of the fittest and is often confused with evolution. See, natural selection, what I believe it's natural selection is quite a reasonable and God-given process whereby we observe a certain genotype that has pre-existed and has gradually adapted to a particular environment. A horizontal change. Not that these variations would produce a new species from another species. So simply that is not observed from molecules to man or from one species. Okay, there are variations within a species that we see that we have different kinds of dogs, but whatever be the changes, dog is not going to be after some time or millions of years. It's not going to be cat or any other animal. So natural selection, of course, there happens, but that is within the species, and that's what we will see, the variation.
Though evolution seems like an unyielding concept, there can be some middle ground in the debate. Some middle ground ideas are theistic evolution and evolutionary creationism. According to the National Center for Science Education, theistic evolution is a theological view in which God creates through the laws of nature. Evolutionary creationism is a form of guided evolution, rather than a form of creation. These two views are hardly distinguishable from one another. As was explained earlier, creationism is the belief that a higher power created heaven and earth of nothing by an act of free will, as stated by Stanford University. Christians, Jews, and Muslims are accepted to be the bigger groups that support creationism. Now, the members of these groups are considered theists, though they are commonly mistaken as deists, which are two different beliefs. According to Stanford University, a theist is someone who believes that a higher power created the world and everything on it, and is still in control of everything and everybody on earth. A deist is an individual that believes in an omnipotent power that created Earth and its content, but thinks that the greater power is not in control of Earth anymore. The most commonly used side of creationism in America is the version from the Book of Genesis, in which the ultimate being, God, created life on Earth in 6 days, in which day does not necessarily mean 24 hours. Next is intelligent design. What exactly is it? It is simply the argument that evolution is not random at all. It's too complex to be random. The only way that evolution works is that a higher being is making it work.
Creation is really, for me, it's the belief that a higher power created the entire universe and everything in it and on it since its creation.
What is science? So I'm not planning to give a definition of what science is, but rather for our discussion would agree with others in the field that who say what science is. So in order for something to be considered science, it is argued that it must be able to be observed and can be tested, or it must be naturalistic. So in that sense, creation is by definition supernatural. So God and supernatural cannot be observed or tested. Therefore, creation and even all intelligent design in that sense cannot be considered science. But I would argue evolution can also be not tested or even not observed. So how can it be part of the science? So if we follow that definition of science in that way, evolution cannot be science either. I believe that we are created in the image of God, and so in that sense I am a creationist. Now, for an evolutionist, then when I say that I'm a creationist, I'm unscientific, biased, regardless of my science credentials, the PhD in science, another degree in medical technology, and many years of postdoctoral research experience. And for them, I am already biased. So for a science community, science is the source of truth, while religion is merely a subjective opinion. So for them, those who embrace evolution, their philosophy is they consider it is unbiased, rational, it is suitable for public speaking, and they denounce any religious views as biased and prejudiced. So my whole point is, whatever data and evidences that we have, both creationists and also evolutionists have the same data, but how we interpret the data is significant. That means our worldview matters very much. Origin of universe and the origin of life, we cannot test or it cannot be observed. So both creation and evolution in that sense is faith-based system. So scientists who advocate evolution are in fact rejecting a plausible theory of origin without even honestly examining its merits, because it does not fit in that definition of science. So if creation is true, then there is a creator to whom we are accountable. So basically, I believe that we are created by God.
Creationism can take many forms: gap, day age, old Earth, young Earth, progressive. These are just some of the more widely known variations of it. A young Earth creationist is an individual that rejects most of modern science and believes that the Earth is between 6,000 years and 10,000 years old. Now, in contrast, there are the old Earth creationists. To be one, an individual accepts most modern physics, chemistry, and geology, but rejects evolutionary biology. Though the group believes that the Earth is very old, progressive creationism is the view held by most of today's old Earth creationists. This group accepts most of what the old Earth creationists think, except that they believe in some modern biology. Gap creationists believe that there was once a temporal gap between verses 1 and 2 in chapter 1 of the book of Genesis. It was either destroyed or it went missing. Then there are the day age creationists, the group that attempts to accommodate science to a literal idea. The idea states that in the 6 days that God used to make all life on earth, one day was not 24 hours. Each day was thousands, maybe millions of years long. One of the foremost ideologies in the debate against evolution is intelligent design, which according to the National Center for Science Education is the idea that life is too complicated to have been created from nothing.
Intelligent design to me is a little unusual for me. I feel that because intelligent design talks about reverse engineering biological structures. Okay, how did they get so complex? So the way they test that is they reverse engineer it. To me, it's a little unusual because you can reverse engineer anything. So I'm not a big fan of that theory, just because to me complexity can get more complex as time goes by, and the only thing you prove with intelligent design is saying, well, yeah, it was really complex and now it's really simple. It doesn't make sense to me. So.
Theory says that an intelligent causes are necessary to explain the complex information-rich structures of biology. But basically, for me, that intelligent designer is God himself. So again, when we say that is God, then evolution is trying to disprove because it is something supernatural. Supernatural is not accepted in the field of science. So for me, evolution is not a satisfactory explanation for the existence of life.
It took over 200 years, but eventually the Catholic Church accepted evidence that the Earth revolved around the Sun. Eventually, most fundamentalists will come to their senses and accept the theory of evolution as well. Whether in 20 years or in 200, it's hard to say. The conflict of creationism and evolution in this country stems back to the First Amendment, which allows freedom of religion, thus disallowing the teaching of evolution or creationism in public schools. The extension of this provision is the Establishment Clause, which causes the large debate of whether it is a violation to teach creationism, which is connected directly to religion, thus violating the separation of church and state.
Creationism deals with being created by a higher power. If you're created by a higher power, then you're adding in religion into it. And in our country, we are supposed to have the separation of church and state. And if you are at a public school, then I don't think creationism should be taught. A parochial or a private school, that's a different situation.
So in the end, one of the best solutions that would put the debate at bay is to be informed. Comprehending both sides of the debate is the only way people can make an informed decision. It's the responsibility of the individual to make their own decision. People need to know the facts and the definitions. It's imperative to know what both creationism and evolution are, along with their subcategories, such as natural selection, intelligent design, and subsets of creationism. Although the populace sees this as up for scientific debate, it's important to know that neither of these topics can be accurately tested, and therefore, they're not scientific. The reason it's so heavily argued is because both sides believe they're right, and they believe that their opinion should be the one taught across the nation. Simply put, the debate is essentially a popularity contest of whether more persons side with creationism or evolution. So, is there even an end to this debate? The end lies with you and your choice.